No one screamed when Ebony collapsed, because even the wind seemed to freeze. Her body struck the red earth with a dull, unforgiving sound that echoed louder than any cry. The calabash slipped from her hand and rolled away as if it feared staying near her. Those who witnessed it would later swear that, for one heartbeat, the spirits paused to watch. The laterite road outside Òkè-Ògùn village was not a place Mercy visited often. It cut through farmland and dry bush like an old wound, a path people hurried across before shadows grew long. Travelers believed the road remembered pain, because it sat between an abandoned shrine and a riverbed that had not tasted water in years. When Ebony fell there, dust rose gently around her, settling on her fine wrapper as though claiming her for the earth. Her eyes were open, wide and glassy, staring at a sky that offered no comfort. Her breathing came in shallow pulls, each one weaker than the last. A woman carrying firewood stopped short and pressed her palm to her chest, whispering a hurried prayer. Another villager shook his head and stepped back, fear tightening his face. In Òkè-Ògùn, people knew some problems followed you home if you touched them. No one moved closer. A hunter adjusted the leather charm around his neck and turned away, pretending he had seen nothing. A young boy tugged at his mother's wrapper, asking why the girl was sleeping on the road, and was quickly silenced. Silence spread, thick and heavy, wrapping the scene in caution. Adekunle arrived with an empty basket and tired feet. He had gone to the market before sunrise, hoping for small luck, and was returning with nothing but disappointment. His sandals were worn thin, his wrapper faded from years of sun and labor. Still, he walked with the quiet steadiness of a man raised to endure. When he saw Ebony fall, something shifted inside him. It was not fear that stopped him, nor curiosity. It was a deep, stubborn pull his late father used to describe as the call of the living. Adekunle dropped his basket and ran. He knelt beside her, the heat from her skin shocking his palms. Fever burned through her like a hidden fire, unnatural and dangerous. Her lips were cracked, and her breath sounded thin, as though she was sipping air through a broken reed. "Sister," he said softly, shaking her shoulder, "hear my voice. Do not go." Her fingers twitched weakly against the dirt, scraping the road as if searching for something solid. Adekunle looked up at the watching faces and felt anger rise, slow and bitter. He waited for someone older, someone braver, someone more important to step forward. No one did. A voice whispered that she might be cursed. Another warned that touching her could bring trouble with the elders or worse, with the spirits. Adekunle did not answer them. He slid one arm beneath her back and another under her knees and lifted her carefully. She was heavier than she looked, not from flesh alone, but from fear, mystery, and the weight of unanswered questions. As he stood, her head fell against his chest, and he felt how hot she was. Someone shouted for him to leave her and save himself. Adekunle tightened his grip instead. He turned toward the distant sound of passing vehicles, heart pounding like a talking drum. He did not know her name. He did not know why a girl dressed like wealth itself lay dying on a forgotten road. He only knew that if he set her down, she would not rise again. Some moments in life do not ask who you are. They ask what you will do, and they remember your answer forever. They say a name spoken at the edge of death never falls to the ground. As Adekunle walked, Ebony's lips moved, shaping a word so faint it barely survived the air. "Baba," she whispered, the sound thin as smoke, yet heavy enough to make Adekunle's chest tighten. It was not a cry of pain, but of longing, the kind that searches for home even while the body is failing. The road stretched ahead, empty and unforgiving. Adekunle's arms ached as he adjusted his grip, sweat rolling down his temples and stinging his eyes. The sun hung high, merciless, as if determined to test how much strength kindness truly had. Each step kicked up dust that clung to Ebony's fine wrapper, dulling its once bright patterns. Whatever life she came from, it was slipping further away with every breath she struggled to take. Adekunle shouted when he heard an engine in the distance. His voice cracked as he waved one elbow, the other arm locked firmly around her body. A battered car slowed, the driver's eyes flicking from Adekunle's worn clothes to the girl's delicate beads and neatly braided hair. Fear crossed the man's face faster than pity, and the car sped off, leaving only heat and disappointment behind. Adekunle swallowed hard and kept walking. He spoke to Ebony constantly, not knowing if she could hear, but refusing to let silence win. He told her they were close, even though he did not know how far the nearest hospital truly was. He promised she would be fine, though the words tasted like lies he hoped would turn into truth. When she stirred again, her breath hitching, he nearly cried with relief. Another vehicle appeared, a yellow taxi scarred by age and hardship. It slowed reluctantly, tires crunching against gravel. The driver leaned out, suspicion etched deep into his face, and asked what trouble Adekunle was carrying. Adekunle answered without pride, only urgency, explaining that the girl was dying and begging him to drive to the teaching hospital in Òkè-Ògùn. The driver hesitated. He had seen traps dressed as mercy before. Then Ebony groaned, a broken sound that cut through doubt like a blade. Something in the driver shifted. The way even hardened hearts remember their own children. He unlocked the door sharply and told Adekunle to get in. Inside the taxi, the world felt strangely distant. Outside, traders shouted, motorcycles roared past, and life continued loudly and carelessly. Inside, there was only the sound of Ebony's breathing and Adekunle's voice urging her to stay awake. When she whispered for water, panic surged through him. He had none to give. Only his words and his hands, steadying her head when the road jolted. At the hospital gate, chaos greeted them. Nurses rushed, stretchers rolled, prayers rose in murmurs and cries. Adekunle jumped out, lifting Ebony once more and shouting for help. Her body was taken from his arms with swift efficiency, disappearing behind swinging doors as doctors called out instructions he did not understand. Left alone in the corridor, Adekunle's legs trembled. Fear arrived fully now that the running was done. He noticed her phone in his bag, slipped there without thought. When he pulled it out, the screen lit up with her smiling face in front of a grand building. It felt like looking at her. Different person. His finger hovered over the emergency contact, labeled BB, Chief Oladimiji. Adekunle hesitated, imagining accusation and danger. Then an alarm rang inside the emergency room, sharp and urgent. His fear turned into resolve. He pressed call, unaware that by doing so, he had stepped into a world far larger than any dusty village road. What if saving a stranger rewrites the map of your life forever? Adekunle felt that question press against him as the hospital doors swung closed. The ringing phone in his hand vibrated again, heavy with consequence. Somewhere beyond those walls, time argued with death. He did not know it yet, but the choice already made had begun to reshape ancestors, futures, and debts across lands he had never imagined walking and names he would learn to fear and honor alike. Chief Oladimiji arrived before dawn, his convoy quiet, his face carved from worry and authority earned through decades of rule. He found Adekunle seated alone, fingers clasped, eyes lifted when shadows crossed the corridor floor with measured, cautious hope lingering. Their worlds met without greeting, wealth and want suspended by the thin thread of a stranger's breath in that moment. Silence spoke first, louder than accusation, as machines hummed and nurses moved like guarded spirits around a fragile boundary there. Adekunle stood when addressed, voice steady, telling everything from the road to the unanswered stairs without embellishment or defense whatsoever. He expected anger, perhaps arrest, but the chief listened as fathers do when truth bleeds through unfamiliar mouths slowly today. When Adekunle finished, he lowered his head, ready to accept any judgment delivered by power, fate, or offended spirits alone. Instead, Chief Oladimagi exhaled deeply, a sound of relief wrapped in restraint that surprised even his closest attendants nearby watching. Abeni survived the night, doctors said, but her spirit hovered like a bird unsure where to land safely again yet. Poison laced her blood, old and deliberate, meant to silence lineage, not just breath through ritual envy and ambition alone. The words fell heavy, turning the corridor colder despite the rising sun that painted windows gold without mercy or warmth. Adekunle felt the story pulling him deeper, refusing to release its grip now bound by truth, courage, and consequence together. Chief Oladimagi spoke of enemies, hidden behind smiles and gifts, who feared succession, purity, and the quiet strength of daughters. Abeni was his only child, raised to think, question, and lead in ways tradition both admired and resisted fiercely publicly. Her collapse was a message written in fear, delivered where chance might erase blame if silence and distance cooperated fully. Adekunle listened, stunned that compassion had pulled him into palace shadows without asking his name or permission first from anyone. By morning, rumors bloomed like weeds, bending truth toward spectacle, as nurses whispered and guards watched Adekunle carefully from corners. Some called him hero, others called him pawn. Few trusted kindness alone in matters touching power, inheritance, and bloodlines publicly. Adekunle stayed, refusing offers to leave, sleeping on benches because departure felt like betrayal of breath he saved yesterday night. Each hour tightened the bond, unseen yet unbreakable, woven by choice, fear, endurance, and stubborn hope together without witnesses present. When Abeni finally woke, her gaze searched until it found him standing smaller than legends, yet impossibly solid before her. She whispered thanks, then his name, learned from nurses and fate braided together by corridors, fear, and waiting hours alone. Adekunle answered simply, unaware that simplicity would soon be tested by courts, charms, and choices refusing silence or retreat anymore. Outside, the sun climbed, and destiny quietly sharpened its teeth preparing to bite everyone bound to this rescue without mercy. Chief Oladimagi watched them, understanding debts had shifted from gold and blood towards something older and dangerous than thrones alone. He offered protection, not as payment, but as acknowledgement that fate sometimes chooses farmers over princes deliberately to teach lessons. Adekunle accepted cautiously, sensing every gift carries a shadow, especially when given beneath fluorescent lights and prayers from strangers present. The story had turned, irreversible as spilled palm oil soaking into soil, clothing, memory, and communal fate further onward now. That night, drums sounded in Adekunle's dreams calling him to crossroads where ancestors bargain with courage and demand witnesses alive. He woke sweating, certain the road had not released him, because roads remember feet that defy fear and destiny waits. Beyond the hospital, unseen eyes measured his steps already belonging to rivals, priests, and truths demanding balance through sacrifice soon. Kindness had opened a door that would not close quietly, and Adekunle stood inside, unable to turn back ever again. Morning returned with birdsong and unanswered questions about loyalty, danger, and how lives intertwined without warning under watchful skies above. Abeni slept peacefully, guarded by machines and prayers while forces beyond medicine prepared their next moves with patience honed sharp. Adekunle stepped outside, feeling the sun differently now, as if chosen paths burn warmer than ordinary mornings for brave souls. Ahead waited courts, curses, loyalty tests, and love, all born from a roadside choice made without witnesses except ancestors watching. The palace gates did not creak, they groaned, as if protesting the truth walking through them. Adekunle paused at the threshold, feeling the weight of carved wood, guarded silence, and generations of power pressing against his chest. He had entered many compounds in his life, but never one that carried history like a living thing. Beyond the gates, destiny waited with patient eyes. The courtyard stretched wide, paved with stone warmed by the morning sun. Chiefs stood in clusters, their flowing agbada whispering against the ground as they turned to stare. Servants froze mid-step, curiosity and judgment flickering across their faces. Adekunle felt suddenly aware of his worn sandals and plain wrapper, yet he kept his head high, remembering the road where courage mattered more than cloth. Chief Oladimeji walked ahead, staff in hand, his presence commanding silence without effort. Word of Ebeni's survival had traveled faster than drums, stirring relief, suspicion, and envy in equal measure. Some saw Adekunle as a blessing sent by the ancestors. Others saw him as an interruption to carefully laid plans in the palace. Survival often depended on interpretation as much as truth. Ebeni emerged slowly, supported by her aunt, her strength fragile, but her eyes sharp with awareness. The poison had weakened her body, not her spirit. When she saw Adekunle, a faint smile touched her lips, and murmurs rippled through the courtyard like disturbed water. That single look unsettled more than any speech could have. The council convened beneath the ancient oak tree, where judgments were believed to echo into the spirit world. Elders cleared their throats, testing words meant to shape fate. Questions came wrapped in politeness, probing Adekunle's lineage, intentions, and silence. He answered simply, never raising his voice, never shrinking, grounding himself in honesty rather than strategy. One chief accused him openly of manipulation, suggesting coincidence rarely walked alone near power. The air tightened, and Adekunle felt danger call subtly around his ankles. Before he could speak, Ebeni stepped forward, her voice steady despite weakness. She told the story as she lived it, naming the road, the dust, the fear, and the hands that refused to let her die. Silence followed, deep and uncomfortable. Truth, when spoken plainly, leaves little room to breathe. Chief Oladimeji struck his staff against the stone once, sealing the moment. Adekunle was declared under palace protection, a guest whose life would be guarded until the poisoners were unmasked. Protection, however, came with boundaries. Adekunle was given a room near the outer quarters, close enough to be watched, far enough to remain separate. Servants whispered instructions carefully, treating him with cautious respect. He felt both honored and caged, understanding that safety in powerful places is rarely free. As days passed, healers worked on Ebeni, mixing herbs older than written memory. She grew stronger, asking questions, listening more than speaking. Adekunle often found her watching the horizon from shaded balconies. Thoughtful and alert, their conversations were quiet, shared over pauses and half-smiles, built on gratitude rather than promise. Yet shadows lengthened in corners of the palace. Adekunle noticed guards change positions more frequently at night. Whispers traveled through servants' quarters, carried by fear rather than gossip. Someone wanted the story to end differently, and patience was wearing thin. One evening, an old priest approached Adekunle by the fire. His eyes were clouded, his voice dry as harmattan air. He warned that saving a life bound Adekunle to its battles, whether he wished it or not. Some debts attract knives, not gratitude. Adekunle listened, heart steady. He thought of the road again, of the moment choice outweighed consequence. He realized he would make the same decision even knowing the danger ahead. Courage, once awakened, does not sleep easily again. That night, a scream cut through the palace walls, sharp and sudden. Adekunle was on his feet before guards moved. Somewhere within the maze of corridors, fate had struck again, impatient and angry. The rescue that began on a dusty road had not ended. It had only reached its next trial. The scream did not fade. It fractured the night into jagged pieces. Adekunle ran barefoot across cool stone, guided by instinct more than direction. Torches flared to life as guards shouted orders that collided and scattered uselessly. In moments like this, the palace revealed itself not as a fortress, but as a maze designed by fear and secrecy. They found the body near the eastern corridor, where moonlight slipped in through narrow slits like spying eyes. A young servant lay twisted on the floor, blood dark against pale stone. Lips parted in unfinished warning, the smell of iron and fear mixed thickly in the air. Adekunle stopped short, chest tightening, recognizing the same helplessness he had seen on the road days before. Abeni arrived moments later, supported but determined. One look told her this was no random violence. The servant had been one of the few who brought her meals during recovery, careful, quiet, observant. Someone had silenced a watcher. Chief Oladimeji's face hardened into something ancient and dangerous. He ordered the palace sealed, gates barred, exits watched. Authority settled like a heavy cloak over the courtyard, turning whispers into prayers. This was no longer an attempt hidden in shadows. It was a challenge spoken aloud in blood. Interrogations began before dawn. Elders questioned servants, guards questioned guards, and truth bent under pressure like heated metal. Adekunle watched silently, noticing who avoided whose eyes, who spoke too quickly, who said too little. Growing up poor teaches a man how to read danger before it speaks plainly. By midday, suspicion narrowed to 3 names, each powerful, each dangerous: a rival chief, a distant cousin, and a trusted advisor whose loyalty had never been questioned. Abeni listened as evidence stacked unevenly, her mind sharper than her body still allowed. Poison, she realized, was only the opening move. That evening, she asked to speak with Adekunle alone. In the quiet of the garden, cicadas humming like restless witnesses, she thanked him again not for saving her life, but for staying. Many would have vanished once danger revealed its true face. Adekunle shrugged, embarrassed by praise that felt too large for his simple choice. She told him the truth she had not shared yet. The poison was meant to force her father's hand into naming a successor favorable to those hungry for power. Her survival ruined careful calculations. Now the only way to restore balance, in their eyes, was chaos. Adekunle felt anger rise, slow and steady. Not the loud kind, but the kind that hardens resolve. He understood now why the road had chosen him. Outsiders see patterns insiders miss. That night, Adekunle followed a hunch. Slipping through servant paths, he watched shadows and counted footsteps. Near the old shrine behind the palace wall, he heard hushed voices arguing. Names surfaced, promises traded, fear exposed. When a blade flashed in torchlight, he knew he had found the heart of the rot. He retreated quietly, heart pounding, and went straight to Chief Oladimeji. The chief listened, eyes narrowed, then summoned trusted guards without ceremony. The trap was set before dawn could interfere. When the conspirators struck again, they walked straight into waiting steel. The fight was brief and brutal, truth tearing free of secrecy at last. The trusted advisor fell to his knees first, confession spilling out with blood and rage. He had orchestrated everything, believing loyalty was weakness and power a reward for clever cruelty. Abeni watched from the balcony as justice unfolded below. Tears slipped down her face, not from relief, but from mourning what trust once meant. Adekunle stood beside her, silent, understanding that victory often tastes like ash before it sweetens. By sunrise, arrests were made, exile decreed, and the palace breathed again, though scars remained. Chief Oladimeji thanked Adekunle publicly, offering land, titles, and wealth. The courtyard waited for his answer, breath held. Adekunle surprised them all. He asked for none of it. He asked only that the servant's family be cared for, and that Abeni be allowed to choose her own future without fear. Murmurs rose, then softened into respect. That morning, drums sounded not for war, but for survival. The road's lesson echoed once more. Courage does not demand reward. Yet destiny, patient and observant, was not finished shaping the man who refused to walk away. The elders say that, when danger passes too easily, it only means the bill has not yet been delivered. Adekunle felt that truth settle into his bones as calm returned to the palace. Laughter slowly crept back into courtyards, and servants resumed routines with careful optimism. Yet beneath the restored order, something waited, patient and watchful, like a drumbeat held just before it is struck. Chief Adekunle's gratitude was genuine, but gratitude from powerful men often arrives carrying expectations. Adekunle was invited to councils, seated closer than tradition allowed. Watched with new curiosity. Some chiefs nodded respectfully. Others measured him like a problem not yet solved. He understood now that refusing gifts did not free him from obligation. It only changed its shape. Abeni recovered steadily, strength returning to her limbs and clarity sharpening her gaze. She trained again with tutors, debated with elders, and walked the palace with renewed authority. Yet she often sought Adekunle's company in quieter spaces, where walls did not listen. Their conversations shifted from survival to responsibility, from what happened to what must follow. She spoke of reform, of balancing tradition with justice, of power that protects rather than consumes. Adekunle listened, offering thoughts shaped by hardship rather than books. He spoke of villages forgotten by councils, of roads that kill quietly, of people who vanish without names spoken. Abeni heard him fully, and something unspoken grew between them, rooted in shared truth. Not everyone approved. Rumors crept like ivy, twisting their closeness into threat. Some whispered that Adekunle had enchanted Abeni. Others claimed he aimed to rule through her. The palace, though cleansed of poison, still brewed fear expertly. One evening, the old priest returned, leaning heavily on his staff. He warned Adekunle that ancestors do not intervene without expectation. A life saved, a kingdom steadied, a conspiracy broken, such balance demanded offering. The spirits, he said, would soon choose how payment must be made. That night, Adekunle dreamed again. He stood at a crossroads where fire met water, ancestors forming a silent circle. A voice asked whether he would carry a burden not born of blood but of choice. He woke before answering, heart pounding, knowing refusal was no longer possible. The next day, messengers arrived from neighboring lands, bringing condolences disguised as congratulations. Politics tightened its grip, alliances shifted, and eyes turned towards succession openly. Chief Adekunle announced that Abeni would be formally presented as heir. Celebration followed, but beneath it stirred unease. During the ceremony, a sudden wind swept through the courtyard, extinguishing torches and scattering dust. The priest collapsed, shouting that the ancestors had spoken. Panic rippled as he declared the spirits demanded a guardian, one bound by fate, not lineage, to walk beside the heir until her reign was secure. All eyes turned slowly to Adekunle. He felt the weight immediately, heavier than any basket he had ever carried. To accept meant surrendering the simple life he knew forever. To refuse meant defying ancestors and risking chaos anew. He looked at Abeni, saw fear and hope tangled in her gaze. Adekunle knelt. Acceptance rippled through the crowd like thunder after lightning. Some protested quietly, others bowed reluctantly. The priest smiled weakly, satisfied that balance had been acknowledged. Adekunle rose, no longer merely a rescuer, but a symbol forged by chance and courage. That night, Abeni thanked him not as a princess, but as a woman allowed to breathe freely again. She asked if he resented the road that changed everything. Adekunle shook his head. Roads, he said, only reveal who we already are. As stars burned bright above the palace, Adekunle understood the ancestors' demand was not sacrifice of blood, but of self. His life was no longer his alone. The final shape of destiny loomed ahead, waiting for the last step to be taken. Stories say that destiny does not end loudly, it settles, like dust after a long journey. Adekunle felt this truth as the days unfolded, following the ancestors' decree. Life in the palace reshaped itself around his new role, and with it, his sense of self. He woke each morning aware that his footsteps now echoed beyond his body, carrying meaning for people who would never know his name. Training began immediately. Warriors taught him discipline, priests taught him restraint, and elders taught him the language of silence. Adekunle listened more than he spoke, understanding that strength without wisdom only sharpens disaster. At night, exhaustion pulled him into deep sleep, yet his dreams grew calmer. The crossroads fading as if satisfied with his answer. Abeni stepped fully into her place as heir, confidence settling on her like a well-worn crown. She addressed disputes with patience, listened to grievances long ignored, and began repairs on the forgotten road where her life had nearly ended. When asked why that road mattered, she simply said that no place chosen by fate should be abandoned. Their bond deepened, steady and unspoken. It was not romance born of haste, but respect grown from shared danger and truth. They walked together often, discussing the future not as rulers, but as people shaped by consequence. In Adekunle, Abeni found honesty unclouded by ambition. In Abeni, Adekunle found purpose larger than survival. Not all resistance vanished. Some chiefs tested boundaries, hoping to bend tradition back into familiar shapes. Adekunle faced these moments without anger, responding with calm firmness learned from hardship. Slowly, opposition softened. Recognizing that force was not the source of his authority, consistency was. Months passed. Harvest festivals returned, drums filled the air, and the palace breathed easily again. Chief Oladimeji watched with quiet pride, knowing his kingdom rested on steadier ground. When he eventually stepped back, it was without fear, trusting the balance now held by many hands. On the anniversary of Abeni's collapse, a ceremony was held on the old road. Elders poured libation, children danced, and traders lined the path once feared. Adekunle stood at the place where dust had claimed her body, feeling the circle complete. The road no longer remembered pain alone. Abeni addressed the gathering, reminding them that courage often appears ordinary and kindness rarely announces itself. She told them that the ancestors worked through choices, not miracles. Adekunle listened, humbled, knowing how close the world had come to silence instead of story. As the sun dipped low, Adekunle walked the road one last time alone. He thought of who he had been, a man with an empty basket and tired feet. He smiled softly, not missing that life, but honoring it. Without it, he would not have recognized the moment that mattered. When he returned to the palace, torches were lit, warm and steady. Abeni waited, her future unfolding without fear for the first time. Adekunle took his place beside her, not above, not behind. The ancestors were quiet. The road was still. Destiny, satisfied, finally rested.